Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video.
Well, welcome to a blustery, very stormy Monday, the 24th of October here at Giga Texas. I got here early to try to beat the weather, and for the most part I was successful. Had to alter my flight plan a little bit, got a little bit of rain during the flight, but not too bad. But because I got here early, I tried to give you some interesting sights, as you can see here, from the east side of the factory looking into the windows. Now it's much more difficult because of the power lines and the distances, and I think the results are kind of mixed, but I gave it a shot. I also want to talk a little bit about the amount of drone flying that I've been doing over the last 27 months here at Giga Texas. It's kind of astounding. As you can see here, 1,610 total flights, 413 hours, and over 4,500 miles, which is nearly 7,800 kilometers worth of flying. And of course, I added more just this morning. And as one viewer pointed out, the distance that my drones have flown here at Giga Texas is nearly the distance between Giga Texas and Giga Berlin, which is kind of amazing to think. So for the intro here, I'm going to do a little bit further discussion about the electrical switchyard and substation construction, kind of adding to what we've talked about before, and then we'll get right into the video. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great week.
So for today, I'd like to follow up on my previous video where I showed these electrical components that had just been delivered to the electrical switchyard or substation construction site, and this inset image gives you a closer view of what these looks like. Now, I wasn't sure what they were, so I asked my viewers, and Ro Herms gave me the idea that these are called knee-type disconnects and will be installed to help disconnect electrical power to the electrical substation. Also, right next to them are bus bars. So knowing this information, let's take a little bit deeper dive and find out a little more about what knee-type disconnectors are. Now this image gives you an idea of what it would look like if it's installed, and as mentioned, they are switches that are used to disconnect the flow of electricity, maybe for maintenance or for other reasons. These knee-type disconnects work in the vertical direction and mechanically disconnect electricity by using an articulated blade and an arm, as you can see in the inset image. According to the sources that I used, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, these types of switches are favored when vertical clearances above the disconnector are restricted. And also, as shown in the inset image, these are usually used with high voltage 245 kilovolts up to 765 kilovolt installations. Here's a quick illustration of how this system works. As you can see in image A, this is where the knee disconnect is in the contact mode and electricity is flowing. In image B, this is the knee in the process of retracting and disconnecting the flow of electricity. And then image C shows the knee disconnector in the fully retracted state. So as I mentioned, I took these photos on the 21st of October, and at that time there were 15 of those knee-type disconnectors. You can see the image at the bottom showing the switchyard layout. Where do you think they will be installed? Also, a few other observations. You note in the drawing that there is actually 3 main bays of the construction site, and I've given you an illustration in the upper right-hand corner to see how these are laid out. Also, per the drawing, it appears that there will be 7 of these A-frame towers installed on the site, and that's something I'll watch as they continue footing installation. Another thing I noticed on the left-hand side of the diagram, which would be the south end of the construction site, it appears that there will be 2 large transformers installed, and this example photo gives you an idea of what it may look like. Also, just south of the temporary switchyard, we see that these large high-voltage circuit breakers are already delivered and ready for installation. And finally, of high interest, as you'll note, the image with the diagram shows that the Bay 3 is to connect to the Giga Texas Energy, which is most likely the Megapack installation that will take place nearby. And finally, to wrap this up, I thought I would give you a 3-month comparo from the same vantage point of the progress at the electrical switchyard or substation construction site. As you can see here, this is how it appeared on the 24th of August 2022. And then the same basic location, the 26th of September 2022. And finally, the 21st of October 2022. So in less than 3 months, they've made a tremendous amount of progress, in my opinion. I hope that this review of the electrical switchyard or substation construction site, some of the details and other information was helpful. My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. As I mentioned in the intro, I got here a little bit early because some stormy weather was arriving, and I thought I would take the opportunity to try to show a little bit of the east side at pre-dawn, as several viewers have asked me to do, and also to try to see if we can look into some of the lit windows on the east side of the building, which is a side of the building we can't normally see, mostly because the power lines are on the way and I can't get close enough to really get a good view. But I'm going to give it a shot and we'll see how it works out. So as you can see, we're starting off on the east secondary main entrance, and inside on the ground floor you can see quite a bit of castings being stockpiled and a lot of workers kind of busy in that particular area as well. I've tried to zoom in a little bit more, but as you can see with the lighting and the distance, it's really kind of hard to get a lot of the detail that I normally would with a little bit better lighting and better distance. But this gives you at least a little bit of a flavor of what's going on the second floor on the body in white as we are heading towards the north now along the east side of the building. As you can see, there's quite a bit of containers on the second floor. It looks like a very large red robot kind of in the middle of the screen. And you can see where this is located in relation to the loading docks or the receiving docks on the ground floor where they're doing a lot of construction. And a little bit later in the video I'll come back and I'll show you that during the daytime. But as you can see, it looks like there's still more fitting out and assembling and just getting everything ready on the second floor. Again, a lot of the crates you can see sort of in the background. And you can also see what looks like to be some sort of maybe an employee gathering location, maybe some vending machines in the background. It's kind of hard to see for sure. But we'll continue to follow the flight to the north, and we'll see what we see along the way. As we pass that really bright light, what we're looking in here is the casting machine structure, and you can kind of get a glimpse of the 4 operational casting machines, some of the racks, mounts, and also castings on the outside, on the east side of the building as well. You can see some of the loading or receiving dock doors open, and just sort of inside a little bit of the casting machine structure. So we'll go ahead and pull back from here, and I'll reposition and try to give you a view from the north side into the casting machine structure in just a minute. So as I reposition the drone to the north, there's a few things that you can notice. First, the Berm lights are off. During my flight, they were coming on and off. I was talking to the crews that were working on them, and they were doing some maintenance on the lighting. So that's why sometimes they're on, sometimes they're off. They were just off at this time. Also, take a look at all of the traffic coming in on the highway. Much of it is coming here to Giga Texas for the works day to begin at this early hour. So this just gives you a good flavor of the activity and the pre-dawn hours here at Giga Texas. Now, as promised, I'll get you a view inside the casting machine structure from the northeast corner. As we approach, Notice that there's a truck with several Model Y bodies getting ready to be hauled away, and there's also another 7 Model Y bodies on the ground here near that truck. And then there's another sort of a test unit onto the left-hand side of the screen with the hood open. So just some interesting developments. Now, as we look inside, what I'm trying to show you is that there is still no sign of the 9,000-ton Gigapress arrival yet, at least not that I can see at this point in time. There are some interesting deliveries off to the left-hand side of the screen inside that east bay, but it's really hard at this vantage point to tell. The other thing that you can see is the continued work on these concrete columns. They are doing some reinforcements of the bridge crane rail mounts on the top end, and that's what the scaffolding around all of these columns are for. Most of the bridge crane rails have been removed and moved over to the west side of the highway. You see a few of them on the ground here, as it looks like they may be getting ready to start reinstalling again. But due to the winds, it really wasn't the best conditions to try to see inside the casting machine structure today. So I gave you my best attempt, and at least we can see some of the work that is going on. So I hope you enjoyed those inside views. So now that the sun is starting to come up, even though there's heavy clouds, the lighting will start improving. So I'm going to reposition the drone over towards the electrical substation, but on the way, take a look at the battery cathode plant. It is well lit. It looks like it has a lot of electricity installed with interior lights, and that's yet another great sign for the work over at the battery cathode plant. And you can see a lot more activity here on the south end of where the electrical substation or switchyards are, both the temporary and the permanent one. And here the lighting is improving now, so you can get a good idea of some of the components, some of the capacitors or the circuit breakers that have been delivered on the left-hand side, more rail mounts next to the temporary switchyard. Now, there are some people that think that the temporary switchyard may stay here after the permanent one is, and then they'll be connected together, and that'll add to the capacity. I don't know if that's true or not, but it will be interesting to monitor that as developments continue on the main permanent electrical switchyard. So as we approach in, as we talked earlier about the knee disconnects, you can see at the bottom of the screen, most of them have been moved. That means that they're being installed. On the left-hand side with those two rectangular sections, those are where those large transformers will be mounted at some point, as we discussed earlier. And this gives you a really good view of the work that is ongoing. Now on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see 3 of those knee-type disconnectors installed on that metal platform. You can also see mounts for another A-frame on the left-hand side amongst all of the vertical steel. You can see more footings being developed in the middle section of the video, and then where the drill is that they're drilling the deep bores so that they can construct more of the footings so that the A-frames can be installed there as well. Here you see many of those knee-type disconnect systems being installed here, and it looks like there's probably 8 more based on what we saw on the south end to be installed. But you can also see some changes on top of the steel parts that are being installed too. It looks like some insulators are being installed. As I reposition the drone to look back towards the south, you can see the large steel poles that will be assembled to connect the electrical wires to the power lines and the substation, and then overall how this looks. And if you compare to the comparison photos I showed at the beginning and the intro, this just gives you an idea of how the progress continues to develop here at the electrical switchyard. I thought I'd give you a good view of how the warehouse on wheels yard looks today, plus some of the activity around this section. Now, since the trailers have been removed from the north end, it makes me wonder if we may see some paving operations here at some point. Not sure, but it's something I am watching, and will show you if that does in fact develop. I'm going to give you a good view of the battery cathode plant. You can see inside it is well lit, kind of confirming what we saw earlier in the video, and just overall how the entire site is transforming. On the left-hand side in that section that they've been preparing, you can see geopiers, and we're going to get a closer look at that. That's another exciting development. Here with the blue pipe installation, you can see those bars of dirt that's been installed. I believe that is to help prevent the pipe from floating up. It did that earlier when we had heavy rains, and I think this is a step to try to prevent that from happening while construction continues. You can also see many more wall panels getting ready to be installed, and also the ground slab section here with the 3 deep foundations continues to show progress. Looks like almost all of the frames or forms in those deep foundations have been removed as well. So we'll continue up towards the north. You can see what looks like welding going on the 3rd floor of the building. And I will just give you a quick view of this clearing location up here with all of the steel parts that have been stockpiled. And with the geopier work, which I'll show you in a second, going on just west of the factory, we now know that this is where the steel is going to be used to construct yet another building on this site. So as we wrap around towards the west side, you can see the work going on the north end, especially with those receiving docks. You can see more of the concrete kind of square vaults have been delivered, so we'll see some more trench work going on. The cranes are not putting wall panels up, and I think it may be because of the wind level. I think that they have some limits of how strong the wind can be before they can put up the panels, but that's just a sort of an idea that I have. It may not be true. You can see the section here where they're preparing for the concrete. Looks like some more trench work is going on, and some just really configuration to prepare for rebar and then concrete. As I mentioned, here is where the geopier work is beginning. Now, geopier is a way of putting deep piers into the ground to help stabilize and strengthen the soil so that construction can continue. And with all of the steel that we've seen with the geopier and the preparation that they're doing for this grade, it's pretty clear that there's going to be a second building installed here near the battery cathode plant, which is an interesting development, and it's kind of exciting to think about the progress that they're making. So as we fly over the warehouse on wheels yard, I want to give you a closer view of the new car staging and transportation lot here on the east side of the parking lot. You can see that many of the cars have been moved away in the last 24 hours, but more are starting to fill back in, and there's also trucks getting ready to pick them up and transport them up to the rail yard up at Cathode, Texas. Also on this smaller parking lot near the helicopter pad, you can see that Model Ys continue to be stored and staged here as well, and especially towards the south end of that lot. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I wanted to give you a better look here at the ramp in front of these receiving docks and just the excavation work that's going on, some more concrete removal. So it looks like another section being reconfigured, and there's also those black and yellow temporary ramps that looks like they're placed for use in this area at some point in the near future. While we're here, I'm going to show you the progress on the body in white roof with the HVAC duct installation. And as you can see, they continue to prepare those 4 small rectangular sections for ducting, and then the larger one. It looks like most of the work has been on that perimeter small wall to join the opening to the roof. I'm going to pull back and show you that the connection point between the E and the S of Tesla for the solar panels is nearly finished. They're just finishing this section with the mounts, and shortly after this we'll see the solar panels installed here, and then I expect them to continue to work towards the south to fill in the gaps between each of the letters. So now that we're on the west side of the building now, I would like to bring the drone down just a bit, and we'll proceed towards the south, and I'll show you some interesting developments as well. First, here is a look at the landscaping section, just a beam of the main entrance and how it looks like. Right now, it doesn't look like there's much change in the last 48 hours. The main entrance section, all of the glass for the doors has been uncovered and some more work inside. Also, I noticed that the lights on the third floor were on, so I wanted to give you a good view inside. Even with the reflections, you can see quite a bit of crates, materials, equipment stockpiled here. Looks like this is sort of a temporary storage point of the factory for the moment. Also, if you look into the windows here, you can see Model Ys on the ground inside the main entrance. So again, more and more changes going on this part of the factory. Wrap around the southwest corner of the building to give you a different perspective on the Model Y staging and also all of the concrete removal work and also the plumbing installation work is going on. So quite a bit of activity on this part of the factory. So first, just take a look at the number of Model Ys that have been staged here. It looks like is about as fast as they arrive here, they're being moved over to the east side and then transport trucks picking them up. But it also looks like the production rate is still at a pretty elevated amount from what we've seen in the past, probably still in that 350 to 400 per day mark. This is a good view of another piece of equipment being delivered here onto the third floor of General Assembly. And as I showed you through the windows just a little bit earlier, you see where most of this equipment is going, at least temporarily. Some of these Model Ys with the flashing lights are getting software updates, so I know some people have asked me about that. And then here we can see the active work to remove these rectangular sections of the concrete that has been saw cut. And as I showed you in my previous video, all of this concrete is being collected and transported north of the battery cathode plant. We're flying over some of the solar panels that are waiting for movement up to the roof, and you can also see some trench work here for that blue water pipe. Also wanted to show you just all of the steel components that are being stockpiled here, and in the distance you can see that horizontal drilling operation still configuring some of those large pipes that went under the Colorado River. This looks like crews are doing some modification to some of the steel parts here. You can see a very large welder, that white and gray device. Also, you can see more of the steel has been delivered now and is continuing to be stockpiled on that east and south end. You can also see some of the work here with excavations going for the pipe that's been installed. Some of it's being filled in. You can also see how they are picking up the concrete sections here. And I'm going to kind of give you a close-in view of this excavator moving the concrete section. In the background you can see crews actually saw cutting the concrete so that they can continue the removal process. reposition the drone further to the south. We'll gain some altitude and just give you an overall view of the entire south end, the concrete removal, the saw cutting, then the rest of the activity that is going on this end of the building. As mentioned, with all of the work to remove the concrete, these Model Ys are soon going to have to be relocated to that east side because the concrete ramp is getting smaller and smaller. As I pull back, one other thing I want to notice or point out to you is underneath the power lines, just at the bottom of the screen, I'll kind of look down a little bit and you'll see that that trench where they were installing the conduit has now been filled back in. So that at least that stage of the work is completed. I hope you enjoyed this sort of a gloomy and rainy day view of Giga Texas, the early pre-dawn views on the east side, and the information presented in the intro. As always, thank you very much for watching.